My name is Jessica Martinez. I'm 29 years old, and I thought I knew what betrayal looked like until my mother-in-law decided to weaponize my own baby shower. As a pediatric nurse who spent years helping other families welcome their babies into the world, I never imagined someone would use my most vulnerable moment, 8 months pregnant with my first child, to destroy me from the inside out. But what Linda did to me that day was just the beginning of a web of lies, so twisted, so calculated, that when I finally exposed the truth, it didn't just destroy her reputation. It shattered everything she'd built her entire identity on. If you think you've heard shocking family betrayal stories before, wait until you hear what happened when I discovered the real reason my mother-in-law was so desperate for attention. Because what I found wasn't just an affair. It was a pattern of manipulation that had been going on for years, and I was just the latest victim in her sick game. Stay with me until the end, because the final twist will leave you questioning everything you think you know about family loyalty. Welcome back to Family Betrayals That Went Too Far, Episode 2. I'm your host, and today's story will leave you speechless. Just like we saw in Episode 1, sometimes the people closest to us are the ones capable of the most devastating betrayals. But what Jessica discovered about her mother-in-law's true motives will shock you to your core. Let me take you back to March 2024, when I was glowing with excitement about becoming a first-time mom. My husband David and I had been trying for 3 years to get pregnant, and when we finally saw those 2 pink lines, we felt like our dreams were finally coming true. David was over the moon, constantly talking to my belly and already planning father-son camping trips. We were that annoying couple who couldn't stop posting ultrasound photos and talking about nursery themes. I should have seen the red flags from the moment I told Linda about the pregnancy. Instead of congratulating us, her first words were, "Well, I hope you're ready for how much your life is about to change." Not, "I'm so happy for you," or "I can't wait to be a grandmother." Just this ominous warning that should have told me everything I needed to know about what was coming. Linda Morrison had been a force of nature from the day I met David 5 years earlier. She was 52, perfectly put together, and had this way of making every conversation about herself while pretending to be selfless. She volunteered at 3 different charities, organized the church fundraisers, and made sure everyone knew about her good deeds. David always defended her, saying she was just passionate about helping people. But I'd started to notice that her help always came with strings attached. When David and I got engaged, Linda insisted on planning our entire wedding because she had connections and could save us so much money. What she actually did was plan her dream wedding, complete with her choice of flowers, her preferred venue, and even her suggestion for my wedding dress. When I gently suggested maybe we could look at other options, she got this wounded look and said, "I just want everything to be perfect for you, honey. I've been planning this day since David was born." I should have put my foot down then. I should have realized that Linda didn't see me as David's wife. She saw me as competition for his attention. But I was young and wanted to keep the peace, so I let her take over. The wedding was beautiful. I'll give her that. But looking back at the photos, I barely recognized myself. Everything from my hair to my makeup to my dress looked like what Linda would have chosen for herself. The pregnancy announcement was no different. Within minutes of telling her the news, Linda had already started making plans. "Oh, we absolutely must have a baby shower," she gushed, pulling out her phone to start a notes app. "I know exactly who to invite, and I have the perfect venue in mind. My friend Sarah just had hers at the country club, and it was divine." I tried to explain that my sister Emma and my best friend Mia had already offered to host something simple at my house, but Linda waved me off. "Nonsense! This is my first grandchild. We're going to do this right." She said it with such finality that I felt like I was being ungrateful for even suggesting alternatives. David, bless his heart, just smiled and said, "Mom's excited. Just let her help." He'd been trained his entire life to go along with whatever Linda wanted, and he genuinely thought her involvement was a good thing. When I tried to express my concerns, he'd say things like, "She just wants to be included," or "You know how she is. She shows love by taking care of things. But I was starting to realize that Linda's version of taking care of things meant taking control of things. Within a week, she'd booked the country club, created a guest list of 75 people, most of whom I barely knew, and started planning a menu that included foods I couldn't even eat while pregnant. When I mentioned that I'd prefer something smaller and more intimate, she looked at me with this pity in her eyes and said, "Oh, honey, you're just nervous because you've never planned something this big before. Trust me, I know what I'm doing." That phrase, "trust me, I know what I'm doing," became Linda's constant refrain over the next few months. She said it when she booked the most expensive floral arrangements without asking me first. She said it when she invited her entire book club without checking if I wanted them there. She said it when she ordered a custom cake in flavors I'd specifically said I didn't like. Every time I tried to voice an opinion about my own baby shower, Linda would get this hurt expression and say something like, "I'm just trying to make this special for you. I thought you'd be grateful." The word grateful became weaponized. I should be grateful she was paying for everything. I should be grateful she had such good taste. I should be grateful she was taking the stress off me during my pregnancy. But I wasn't grateful. I was frustrated and increasingly anxious. This was supposed to be my moment to celebrate with my closest friends and family, but it felt like I was attending someone else's party. Linda had turned my baby shower into a showcase for her own social status, and I was just the pregnant woman who happened to be the excuse for the event. The worst part was how she'd dismissively wave off my concerns while pretending to care about my feelings. "You're just emotional because of the hormones," she'd say with a patronizing smile. "Once you see how beautiful everything turns out, you'll understand why I made these choices." It was gaslighting disguised as motherly wisdom, and it was driving me crazy. I started having panic attacks thinking about the shower. My hands would shake when Linda would call with updates about some new detail she'd added without consulting me. I'd lie awake at night, my 8-month pregnant body uncomfortable and my mind racing with dread about what was supposed to be a joyful celebration. I felt like I was losing control of my own life, and the baby hadn't even been born yet. David could see I was struggling, but he didn't understand why. "It's just a party, Jess," he'd say when I'd try to explain my feelings. "Mom's handling everything so you don't have to stress. Isn't that what you want?" He meant well, but he'd been so conditioned to see Linda's controlling behavior as normal that he couldn't understand why I felt suffocated by it. 3 weeks before the shower, I finally had enough. Linda had just called to inform me that she'd changed the theme from Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, which I'd chosen, to Vintage Garden Party, which she preferred, because it photographs better. I hung up the phone and burst into tears, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my cell phone. That's when I decided I needed to have a serious conversation with David about boundaries. I sat him down that evening and tried to explain how I was feeling. "I know your mom means well," I said, "but I feel like I'm not even a guest at my own baby shower, let alone the person it's supposed to be honoring." David looked genuinely confused. "What do you mean?" "She's doing everything for you." "That's exactly the problem," I said, my voice breaking. "She's doing everything instead of me. I don't want her to plan my baby shower. I want to plan it with my sister and my friends. I want to choose the decorations and the food and the guest list. This is my baby we're celebrating." For a moment, I thought I was getting through to him. David reached over and took my hand, his expression softening. "I'm sorry, babe. I didn't realize you felt that way. Maybe we can talk to her about scaling things back?" But when David approached Linda about giving me more input in the planning, she completely turned it around. She called me that same evening, her voice dripping with wounded martyrdom. "David tells me you're unhappy with the shower planning," she said. "I'm so sorry you feel that way. I was just trying to help, but if you'd prefer to handle everything yourself at 8 months pregnant, I completely understand." It was masterful manipulation. She'd made it sound like I was being ungrateful and unreasonable, while positioning herself as the selfless mother-in-law who was being rejected for trying to help. When I tried to explain that I just wanted some input in the decisions, she cut me off. "Of course, honey. You're right. This is your day." But then she added, "I just hope you realize that I've already put deposits down on everything, and most of it's non-refundable. I'd hate for you to have to pay for everything twice, just to change things now." I felt trapped. She'd spent thousands of dollars on arrangements I never asked for, and now I was supposed to either accept her choices or pay for them myself. It was financial coercion disguised as generosity, and it was brilliant in its cruelty. That night, I called my sister Emma and finally broke down completely. "I feel like I'm going crazy," I sobbed into the phone. "She's planning my baby shower like it's her own party, and when I try to say anything, she makes me feel like I'm being selfish and ungrateful." Emma, who had never liked Linda from the beginning, was furious. "This is exactly what she did with your wedding, Jess. She steamrolled you then, and she's doing it again. You need to put your foot down." "But what if I'm wrong?" I asked. "What if I am just being emotional and hormonal and she really is trying to help?" "Listen to me," Emma said, firmly. "You're not crazy. You're not being dramatic. You're 8 months pregnant, and someone is hijacking what should be one of the most special days of your pregnancy. Your feelings are valid, and you have every right to want some control over your own celebration." Emma's words gave me the courage I needed. I decided that even though I couldn't change the venue or the guest list at this point, I could at least try to have some input in the final details. I called Linda the next day and asked if we could meet for coffee to go over the last-minute arrangements together. "Of course, sweetheart," Linda said, her voice sugary sweet. "I'm so glad you want to be involved. I have some wonderful surprises planned that I think you'll absolutely love." The way she said surprises made my stomach clench with anxiety. I'd learned to be wary of Linda's surprises because they were usually things that benefited her more than anyone else. But I told myself I was being paranoid. She was planning my baby shower. What kind of surprises could she possibly have that would be about her? I had no idea that Linda's biggest surprise would destroy not just my baby shower, but my entire relationship with David's family. I had no idea that she'd been planning something so calculated, so cruel, that it would expose secrets that had been hidden for months. And I definitely had no idea that by the end of that day, I'd have evidence that would destroy Linda's carefully constructed image forever. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the coffee meeting, because that's when I started to realize that Linda's help with my baby shower was never about celebrating my baby. It was about something much more sinister. The coffee shop Linda chose was, of course, the most expensive one in town, the kind of place where a simple latte costs $12, and they serve everything on handmade ceramic plates. Linda was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with her laptop open and a stack of printed papers beside her. She looked like she was conducting a business meeting, which I was starting to realize she probably was. "Jessica," she called out, waving me over with a bright smile. "I ordered you a decaf vanilla latte with oat milk. I know that's your favorite." It wasn't my favorite, but Linda had a way of deciding what everyone else liked and then acting like she was being thoughtful when she imposed her choices on them. As I settled into the chair across from her, trying to find a comfortable position for my 8-month pregnant body, Linda immediately launched into her presentation. "I'm so excited to show you everything I've finalized for the shower," she said, turning her laptop screen toward me. "I think you're going to be absolutely thrilled." What I saw on her screen made my heart sink. She'd created a detailed PowerPoint presentation, complete with slide transitions and professional graphics, outlining every aspect of the shower. The first slide read, "Baby Shower Extravaganza for Jessica and David's Bundle of Joy," in elegant script font, with a photo of David and me from our wedding as the background. "I thought we'd start with the timeline," Linda said, clicking to the next slide. "Guests arrive at 2 p.m. for cocktails and mingling. The professional photographer I hired will be set up in the main ballroom to capture candid moments. At 2:30, we'll have the welcome speech. That's where I introduce you and David to everyone and share some sweet memories about David's childhood." I interrupted her. Wait, you're giving a speech at my baby shower? Linda's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Well, yes. As the hostess and the grandmother-to-be, I thought it would be appropriate to welcome everyone and set the tone for the celebration, unless you'd prefer to do it yourself. She said it in a way that suggested she thought I was incapable of public speaking. I guess that's fine, I said, though my stomach was churning. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. Linda positioning herself as the center of attention at my own event. She clicked to the next slide, which showed a seating chart. I've arranged the tables by social groups, she explained. Your work friends are at table 1, your family at table 2, and my friends, the church ladies and book club, are at tables 3, 4, and 5. David's college friends are at table 6, and the neighbors are at table 7. I counted quickly in my head. Linda, that's like 70 people. I thought we agreed on 30. Oh, the list just grew organically, she said dismissively. You know how it is. Once word gets out about a celebration, everyone wants to be included. I couldn't bear to hurt anyone's feelings by leaving them out. But I knew Linda well enough by now to understand that this wasn't about other people's feelings. It was about her own. She wanted a big, impressive event that would showcase her organizing skills and social connections. My comfort level didn't factor into her calculations. The next slide showed the menu, which was entirely composed of foods I couldn't eat while pregnant. Sushi, soft cheeses, wine pairings, and a raw oyster bar. When I pointed this out, Linda laughed and said, "Oh, don't worry. I ordered a separate plate of crackers and fruit for you. You'll be fine." I felt my face heating up. Linda, I'm the pregnant woman this shower is supposedly for. Shouldn't most of the food be things I can actually eat? You're being a little dramatic, don't you think? Linda said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. It's not like you're going to starve. Besides, most of the guests aren't pregnant, so we need to consider their preferences too. That's when I realized what was happening. Linda wasn't throwing me a baby shower. She was throwing herself a party and using my pregnancy as an excuse. Every choice she'd made was designed to impress her friends and showcase her event planning skills. I was just the prop that justified the celebration. Let me show you the real showstopper, Linda continued, clicking to a slide titled Special Surprises. I've arranged for several special moments throughout the day that I think will make this shower absolutely unforgettable. The first surprise was a professional videographer who would be documenting the entire event. I thought we could create a beautiful keepsake video of the day, Linda explained, with interviews from all the important people in your life about the hopes and dreams for the baby. The second surprise was a memory lane display featuring photos of David from birth to adulthood, arranged on easels around the room. I thought it would be sweet to show everyone what a precious child David was, Linda said. I've included some of his baby photos, school pictures, and even some from his college graduation. I noticed there were no photos of me in the display. Not our engagement photos, not pictures from our dating years, not even our wedding photos. It was entirely focused on David's history with Linda, as if I was just a recent addition to their story rather than the person carrying their grandchild. The third surprise made me feel physically sick. I've arranged for a special blessing ceremony, Linda announced proudly. Pastor Matthews from our church will be there to offer a prayer for the baby and your family. I thought it would be meaningful to have a spiritual component to the celebration. I stared at her in disbelief. Linda, you know I'm not religious. We've talked about this. David and I aren't raising the baby in the church. Oh, I know you think that now, Linda said with a dismissive wave. But once the baby comes, you'll want them to have spiritual guidance. I'm just planning ahead for what you'll eventually want anyway. That was it. That was the moment I realized Linda wasn't just controlling. She was delusional. She'd created an entire fantasy about who I was and what I wanted. And she was planning my baby shower based on her delusions rather than reality. She'd convinced herself that she knew what was best for me better than I knew myself. Linda, I need you to cancel the blessing ceremony, I said firmly. That's not something I want at my shower. Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, hurt, and then something that looked almost like anger. I already confirmed with Pastor Matthews, she said. He's cleared his schedule specifically for this. It would be incredibly rude to cancel now. I don't care if it's rude, I said, my voice rising. It's my baby shower, and I don't want a religious ceremony. Please cancel it. Linda leaned back in her chair, studying me with cold eyes. You know, Jessica, I'm starting to think you don't appreciate everything I'm doing for you. Most daughters-in-law would be grateful to have someone care enough to plan such a beautiful celebration. There it was again, the word grateful. I was supposed to be grateful for her taking over my life. I was supposed to be grateful for her ignoring my wishes and imposing her own. I was supposed to be grateful for being treated like a child who couldn't make her own decisions. I am grateful, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But I also want to have some say in my own celebration. Is that really too much to ask? Linda's expression softened, but there was something calculating in her eyes. Of course not, honey. You're absolutely right. This is your day, and you should have input. She paused as if she was considering something. Actually, I have one more surprise that I think will make you feel much better about everything. She clicked to the final slide, which was titled The Grand Finale. All it showed was a photo of a beautifully wrapped gift box with a note that read, "For Jessica, a surprise that will change everything." What is it? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Linda's smile was mysterious and unsettling. I can't tell you. It wouldn't be a surprise then, but I promise you, it's something that will make this day absolutely unforgettable. Something that will show everyone just how much our family has to celebrate. The way she said, "our family," made my skin crawl. There was something possessive and territorial about it, as if she was claiming ownership of not just the baby shower, but the baby itself. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality, wondering if I was being paranoid or if Linda really was as manipulative as she seemed. I left the coffee shop that day with my hands shaking and my mind racing. Everything Linda had shown me confirmed my worst fears about the baby shower. She'd turned it into her own personal showcase, with me as nothing more than a supporting character in her production. But what terrified me most was that mysterious final surprise. Something about the way she talked about it made me feel like I was walking into a trap. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Linda's words. Something that will show everyone just how much our family has to celebrate. What could she possibly have planned that would be about our family, rather than about me and my baby? I tried to talk to David about my concerns, but he just brushed them off. Mom's just excited about being a grandmother, he said. You're reading too much into things. Just let her have her moment. But I was starting to understand that Linda's moment was coming at the expense of mine. And whatever she had planned for that final surprise, I had a sick feeling that it was going to be the ultimate betrayal. I had no idea just how right I was. The morning of the baby shower, I woke up with a sense of dread that I couldn't shake. My hands were trembling as I got dressed, and I kept having to stop and take deep breaths to calm my racing heart. David kept telling me I was being silly, that I should be excited, but something in my gut was screaming that this day was going to be a disaster. The shower was scheduled to start at 2 p.m., but Linda had insisted I arrive at noon for final preparations and photos. When David and I pulled up to the country club, I could see Linda through the windows, directing a team of workers who were setting up decorations. She was in her element, clipboard in hand, barking orders like a military commander. She looks happy, David said, squeezing my hand. This is going to be great, babe. Just try to enjoy it. But as we walked into the ballroom, I felt like I was entering someone else's dream. Linda had transformed the space into an elaborate garden party, complete with towering floral arrangements, strings of fairy lights, and elegant linens in shades of pink and gold. It was beautiful. I'll give her that, but it looked nothing like anything I would have chosen for myself. Jessica! Linda called out, rushing over to greet us. She was wearing a flowing floral dress that made her look like she was attending a garden party rather than hosting a baby shower. You look absolutely radiant. Come, let me show you everything. She led us through the room, pointing out every detail with obvious pride. The centerpieces were elaborate arrangements of peonies and roses that probably cost more than my monthly salary. The cake was a 3-tiered masterpiece, decorated with sugar flowers and gold leaf accents. Everything was picture perfect and completely impersonal. "Where's the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star theme we discussed?" I asked, looking around for any sign of the decorations I'd originally wanted. "Oh, I decided the garden party theme would be more sophisticated," Linda said dismissively. "Trust me, this will photograph much better. Speaking of which, let me introduce you to Marcus, our photographer, and Sarah, our videographer. They'll be capturing every moment of this special day." Marcus stepped forward with a professional smile, his camera already in hand. "Congratulations on your pregnancy," he said. "Linda's told me so much about you. She's incredibly excited about becoming a grandmother." That phrase stuck with me. Linda had told him about herself, not about me. This was starting to feel less like my baby shower and more like Linda's grandmotherhood announcement party. Now, "Let's get some photos of you with the decorations before the guests arrive," Linda said, positioning me in front of the gift table. "Marcus, make sure you get some shots of Jessica with the beautiful arrangements. These will be perfect for the family album." As Marcus snapped photos, I felt like a model posing for someone else's vision. Linda directed every shot, telling me where to stand, how to hold my hands, which way to turn. I was 8 months pregnant and exhausted, but she kept insisting on just a few more until I felt I was going to collapse. "Perfect," Linda finally declared. "Now, let's go over the timeline one more time. Guests arrive at 2 p.m. We'll have cocktails and mingling until 2:30. Then I'll give the welcome speech. Games and activities until 3:30, then gift opening, and finally the special surprise at 4:30. What exactly is this surprise?" I asked for the 100th time. Linda's smile was mysterious and unsettling. "You'll see soon enough. I promise it's going to be the highlight of the entire day." The guests started arriving right on time, and I was struck by how many people I barely knew. Linda's book club friends, her church group, neighbors I'd met maybe once, they all seemed to know each other better than they knew me. My own friends and family looked a bit overwhelmed by the elaborate setup and the formal atmosphere. My sister Emma pulled me aside during the cocktail hour. "This is a lot," she said, gesturing around the room. "Are you okay? You look kind of pale." "I feel like I'm at someone else's party," I admitted. "Linda planned everything without asking me what I wanted. I don't even know half these people." "Why didn't you say something?" Emma asked, her voice full of concern. I tried, but she made me feel like I was being ungrateful. And David just keeps saying I should let her have her moment. I felt tears starting to build up. I'm 8 months pregnant, and I feel like I'm being sidelined at my own baby shower. Emma looked furious. "This is exactly what she did at your wedding. She steamrolled you then, and she's doing it again. You need to stand up for yourself." But before I could respond, Linda was calling everyone to attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please," she announced, tapping her champagne glass with a fork. "I'd like to welcome you all to this beautiful celebration of our family's newest addition." Notice how she said, "our family" again, not Jessica's baby, or even David and Jessica's baby. She was claiming ownership of my child before it was even born. Linda launched into a speech about David's childhood, sharing embarrassing stories and showing baby photos on a large screen she'd set up. The guests were laughing and awing at the photos, but I felt increasingly invisible. This was supposed to be about celebrating my pregnancy, but Linda had made it about celebrating her role as David's mother. "David was such a precious baby," Linda continued, clicking through photo after photo. "I always knew he'd make a wonderful father someday. And now, at 31 years old, he's finally ready to start his own family." Finally ready? I'd been ready for years. We'd been trying to get pregnant for 3 years, but Linda made it sound like David had just decided he was mature enough to be a father. Again, I was erased from the narrative of my own life. The games and activities were equally centered around Linda's vision of what a baby shower should be. Instead of the simple, fun games I'd wanted, she'd organized elaborate activities that required professional facilitation. There was a guess the baby food tasting that I couldn't participate in because of my pregnancy restrictions, and a baby photo matching game that featured only photos of David's extended family. When it came time for gift opening, Linda had arranged for me to sit in an ornate chair at the front of the room while she stood beside me, announcing each gift and gift giver like she was hosting a game show. "This beautiful blanket is from my dear friend Margaret," she'd say, holding up each item for the photographer. "And this adorable onesie set is from the ladies at church." I felt like a prop in Linda's performance. She was getting more attention than I was, and she seemed to be loving every minute of it. The guests were complimenting her on the decorations, the food, the organization. Everything that was supposed to be about me was being attributed to her. But the worst was yet to come. As we neared the end of the gift opening, Linda stood up and tapped her glass again. "Before we finish up, I have one very special announcement to make," she said, her voice carrying a strange excitement that made my stomach clench. She walked over to a side table where there was a beautifully wrapped box I hadn't noticed before. As she picked it up, I saw that it wasn't a gift for me. It was a gift for her. The tag read, "For Linda, from your loving husband." "Ladies and gentlemen," Linda announced, her voice trembling with emotion, "I have some incredibly exciting news to share with all of you on this beautiful day." The room fell silent. I felt David tense beside me, and I could see confusion on the faces of the guests. Whatever Linda was about to announce, it wasn't something she discussed with anyone beforehand. Linda opened the box with theatrical flair, revealing a tiny pair of baby booties. She held them up for everyone to see, tears streaming down her face. "I'm pregnant," she announced, her voice breaking with emotion. "At 52 years old, I'm going to be a mother again." The room erupted in gasps and shocked murmurs. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. This was it. This was Linda's ultimate power play. She'd hijacked my baby shower to announce her own pregnancy, stealing my thunder and making herself the center of attention. "I know this is a surprise to everyone," Linda continued, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Harold and I never planned for this, but sometimes life has the most beautiful surprises in store for us. Our babies are going to be so close in age, practically siblings." I looked over at David, who looked as shocked as I felt. He'd had no idea this was coming. Harold, Linda's husband, was sitting at one of the back tables, looking equally stunned and uncomfortable. "I wanted to share this news today because I thought it would be so wonderful to celebrate both pregnancies together," Linda said, her voice now strong and confident. "Jessica, isn't this amazing? Our children are going to grow up together." Everyone was staring at me, waiting for my reaction. I felt like I was suffocating. This was supposed to be my day, my moment to be celebrated and honored, and Linda had turned it into her own pregnancy announcement party. She'd planned this entire elaborate shower not to celebrate me, but to create the perfect stage for her own big reveal. I need some air," I managed to say, struggling to stand up from the chair. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold onto my water glass. "Oh, honey, are you okay?" Linda asked, but there was something triumphant in her voice. She'd gotten the reaction she wanted. She'd completely upstaged me at my own event. I stumbled toward the bathroom, my vision blurring with tears and rage. Behind me, I could hear the guests buzzing with excitement about Linda's announcement. My baby shower had officially become Linda's pregnancy reveal party. But as I sat in the bathroom stall, crying and trying to process what had just happened, I realized something important. Linda's announcement didn't add up. She was 52 years old, and Harold was 55. They'd been married for 30 years. If Linda was really pregnant, why hadn't she mentioned it before? Why had she waited until this exact moment to share the news? That's when it hit me. Linda wasn't pregnant. She was lying. This was all an elaborate scheme to steal attention from me, and she'd concocted a fake pregnancy to do it. The question was, how could I prove it? And more importantly, what else was Linda lying about? I sat in that bathroom stall for what felt like hours, my mind racing as I tried to piece together what had just happened. Linda's pregnancy announcement had been so perfectly timed, so dramatically orchestrated, that it felt like a performance rather than a genuine surprise. And the more I thought about it, the more inconsistencies I noticed. First, there was Harold's reaction. He'd looked genuinely shocked when Linda made her announcement, not like a man who'd been planning for a new baby. If they'd been trying to conceive, or if this was a planned pregnancy, wouldn't he have looked happy or excited? Instead, he'd looked uncomfortable and confused. Second, there was the timeline. Linda had been planning this shower for months, inserting herself into every detail and making sure she was the center of attention. If she'd known she was pregnant during that time, why hadn't she mentioned it? Why wait until my baby shower to share the news unless she specifically wanted to overshadow my moment? Third, there was the gift box. The tag had read, "From your loving husband," but Harold hadn't given it to her. She'd placed it on the table herself. That meant she'd bought her own prop for this performance. As I sat there, pieces of a larger puzzle started falling into place. Linda's desperate need for attention, her obsession with controlling every aspect of my pregnancy and baby shower, her constant references to our family, it all painted a picture of someone who was deeply insecure about her place in her son's life. I took a deep breath and forced myself to stand up. I needed to get back out there and figure out what was really going on. But as I opened the bathroom door, I almost collided with my sister Emma. "There you are," Emma said, her face full of concern. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Linda just hijacked my baby shower to announce her own pregnancy. I'm 8 months pregnant, and she managed to make this day about herself. Emma's face darkened with anger. "That woman is unbelievable. But Jessica, I need to tell you something. I've been talking to some of the other guests, and nobody believes she's actually pregnant." "What do you mean?" I asked, though part of me already knew what she was going to say. "Think about it," Emma said, lowering her voice. "She's 52 years old. She's not showing at all, and Harold looked like he'd seen a ghost when she made that announcement. Plus, my friend Sarah works at the clinic where Linda supposedly had her prenatal care, and she said Linda's never been a patient there." My heart started racing. "You think she's lying?" "I know she's lying," Emma said firmly. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Before I could answer, we heard voices approaching the bathroom. Emma grabbed my arm and pulled me into the empty conference room next door. Through the thin walls, we could hear Linda talking to someone in an urgent, hushed tone. "I know it was risky," Linda was saying, "but I had to do something. Jessica's been getting all the attention, and I could see David pulling away from me. This pregnancy announcement will bring the focus back to our family where it belongs." "But Linda, what happens when people start asking questions?" A woman's voice replied. I recognized it as Linda's friend Margaret from the book club. "I'll figure something out," Linda said dismissively. "Maybe I'll have a miscarriage in a few weeks. That'll get me even more sympathy and attention?" Emma and I looked at each other in shock. Linda was openly admitting to faking her pregnancy, and she was already planning to fake a miscarriage to get more attention. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. "And what about Harold?" Margaret asked. "He didn't look very happy about the announcement." Linda's laugh was cold and bitter. "Harold will go along with whatever I say. He always has. Besides, he's been so distant lately, spending all that time at the gym with his new trainer. This will remind him where his priorities should be." There was something in the way she said "new trainer" that made my blood run cold. Emma grabbed my hand and squeezed it tight as we continued listening. "Speaking of trainers," Linda continued, "I need to call Marcus later. We need to coordinate our stories about the timeline." "Marcus?" Margaret asked. "My personal trainer," Linda said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. "The one who's been helping me with my flexibility training. Harold thinks I'm just trying to stay in shape, but Marcus and I have been working on much more than just physical fitness." My stomach dropped. Linda was not only faking a pregnancy to steal attention from me, but she was also having an affair with her personal trainer. And she was using her fake pregnancy to manipulate her husband while she cheated on him. "Linda, this is getting very complicated," Margaret said nervously. "Maybe you should just tell everyone the truth about the pregnancy." "Absolutely not," Linda snapped. I've worked too hard to build my reputation in this town to let some girl who's been in the family for 5 minutes take over my role. I'm the matriarch of this family, and I'm going to remind everyone of that." Emma and I sat in stunned silence as we heard Linda's heels clicking away down the hallway. The pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place, and the picture they created was uglier than I'd ever imagined. Linda hadn't just faked a pregnancy announcement to steal attention from me. She'd orchestrated this entire elaborate scheme because she saw me as a threat to her position in the family. She was so desperate to maintain her status as the center of attention that she was willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate everyone around her. "We have to do something," Emma said quietly. "We can't let her get away with this." But I was already formulating a plan. Linda thought she was the only one who could play games, but she was about to learn that she'd picked the wrong person to mess with. I might have been 8 months pregnant and emotionally vulnerable, but I was also a pediatric nurse who'd spent years dealing with difficult people and complicated situations. I knew how to gather evidence, and I knew how to expose the truth. "Emma, I need you to help me," I said, my voice steady for the first time all day. "Linda wants to play games? Fine, but she's about to learn that I'm better at this than she is." We spent the next few minutes planning our strategy. Emma would go back to the party and keep an eye on Linda while I made some phone calls. I started with Harold, Linda's husband, who was probably the most confused person at the entire shower. I found him outside on the club's terrace, looking like he needed some air. "Harold," I said gently, "can we talk for a minute?" He looked up at me with tired eyes. "Jessica, I'm so sorry about Linda's announcement. I had no idea she was going to do that at your shower." "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about," I said, sitting down beside him. "Harold, did you know Linda was pregnant before today?" Harold's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, embarrassment, and finally, something that looked like relief. "Jessica, I need to tell you something, but I'm not sure how to say it." "Just tell me the truth," I said softly. Harold took a deep breath. "Linda isn't pregnant. She can't be. I had a vasectomy 15 years ago, and I never had it reversed. We haven't been intimate in over a year." His voice broke on the last words. My heart ached for him. Harold was a good man who'd been married to Linda for 30 years, and he was just now realizing that his wife was capable of such elaborate deception. "Harold, there's something else you need to know," I said gently. "Linda's been having an affair with her personal trainer, Marcus." Harold's face went white. "How do you know that?" "I overheard her talking about it. She's been using her gym sessions as cover for the affair." I felt terrible for having to tell him, but he deserved to know the truth. Harold sat in silence for a long moment, processing everything I'd told him. Finally, he looked up at me with something that looked like determination. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to help me expose the truth," I said. "Linda hijacked my baby shower to announce a fake pregnancy, and she's been manipulating everyone around her for months. It's time for people to see who she really is." Harold nodded slowly. "What do you need me to do?" "First, I need you to call your doctor and get documentation of your vasectomy. Then, I need you to help me get Linda's phone. I have a feeling there are text messages on there that will prove the affair." While Harold made his phone calls, I went back inside and found Emma. She'd been watching Linda, who was now holding court in the center of the room, basking in the attention from her pregnancy announcement. "She's been telling everyone about her morning sickness and her cravings," Emma reported. "She's really committing to this lie." "Not for much longer," I said grimly. Harold confirmed that she can't be pregnant. He had a vasectomy 15 years ago and never had it reversed, and he's willing to help us expose her. Emma's eyes widened. "This is about to get very ugly." "Linda made it ugly when she decided to steal my baby shower for her own sick games," I said. "She wants attention? She's about to get more attention than she ever bargained for." Harold came back with his phone in hand. "I got the documentation from my doctor," he said quietly. "And I managed to get Linda's phone when she left it on the gift table. There are dozens of text messages between her and someone named Marcus." He handed me the phone, and I scrolled through the messages. What I found was even worse than I'd imagined. Linda and Marcus had been having an affair for 6 months, and their text messages were explicit and detailed. But more than that, they'd been planning this fake pregnancy announcement for weeks. One message from Marcus read, "Are you sure about the pregnancy announcement? What if someone asks for proof?" Linda's response was chilling. "I've got it all figured out. I'll say I'm too early for an ultrasound, and then I'll have a miscarriage in a few weeks. Harold will feel so guilty he'll never question anything I do again." Another message showed Linda talking about me. "Jessica thinks she's so special because she's pregnant. I'm going to remind everyone that I'm the real matriarch of this family. Let's see how special she feels when she has to share the spotlight." The messages painted a picture of a woman who was not only willing to fake a pregnancy for attention, but who was also actively trying to undermine and hurt me. She'd planned this elaborate scheme specifically to destroy my baby shower and make me feel small and insignificant. "This is it," I said to Emma and Harold. "This is everything we need to expose her." But as I looked around the room at all the guests who were still celebrating Linda's pregnancy, I realized that simply showing them the text messages wouldn't be enough. Linda was a master manipulator who'd been lying to these people for years. She'd find a way to spin the evidence, to make herself look like the victim. No, I needed to do something more dramatic. I needed to expose Linda in a way that would be so public and so undeniable that she couldn't talk her way out of it. "Emma," I said, "remember how Linda hired a videographer to document this whole event?" Emma's face lit up with understanding. "You want to give them something worth documenting." "Exactly. Linda wanted to make this day unforgettable. I'm going to make sure she gets exactly what she asked for." I walked over to the center of the room and picked up the microphone Linda had been using for her speeches. The guests gradually quieted down, expecting another announcement about party games or gift opening. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the room, "I have something very important to share with all of you." Linda looked up from across the room, her face showing the first signs of concern. She'd been so focused on basking in the attention from her pregnancy announcement that she hadn't noticed Harold and me working together. "First, I want to thank Linda for organizing this beautiful shower," I continued, my voice steady and calm. "She's certainly made this a day I'll never forget. In fact, she's made it so memorable that I have some very special news to share with everyone." Linda started moving toward me, probably sensing that something was wrong, but Emma stepped into her path, blocking her way. "Linda announced today that she's pregnant with her second child," I said, holding up her phone. "What she didn't mention is that she's been documenting this pregnancy very carefully in her text messages with her personal trainer, Marcus." The room fell silent. Linda's face went white as she realized what was happening. "For example," I continued, reading directly from her phone, she texted Marcus last week saying, "Are you sure about the pregnancy announcement? What if someone asks for proof?" And Marcus replied, "Just say you're too early for an ultrasound." Gasps and murmurs started rippling through the crowd. Linda tried to push past Emma to get to me, but Harold stepped forward and blocked her path. "Or this message," I continued, where Linda wrote, "I'll have a miscarriage in a few weeks. Harold will feel so guilty he'll never question anything I do again." The room erupted in shocked voices. Linda was frantically trying to get to me, but several guests were now blocking her path, their faces showing disgust and disbelief. "And just in case anyone is wondering about the biological possibility of Linda's pregnancy," I said, "Harold would like to share some information with you." Harold stepped forward, his face grim but determined. "Linda cannot be pregnant," he said clearly. "I had a vasectomy 15 years ago, and I never had it reversed. We haven't been intimate in over a year." The room fell completely silent. Linda stopped struggling and just stood there, her face cycling through shock, rage, and something that looked like panic. "But perhaps the most interesting messages," I continued, "are the ones where Linda discusses her real motivations for this announcement. She wrote to Marcus, 'Jessica thinks she's so special because she's pregnant. I'm going to remind everyone that I'm the real matriarch of this family.'" I looked directly at Linda as I read her next message. Let's see how special she feels when she has to share the spotlight. The guests were no longer just murmuring. They were openly expressing their shock and disgust. Linda's friends from the book club and church were looking at her with horror, realizing that they'd been manipulated and used as props in her elaborate deception. "Linda hijacked my baby shower," I said, my voice growing stronger. Not to celebrate a pregnancy, but to steal attention from me because she couldn't stand that I was the center of attention for one day. She faked a pregnancy, planned to fake a miscarriage, and has been cheating on her husband with her personal trainer for 6 months. Linda finally found her voice. "Those messages are fake," she screamed. "Jessica is lying. She's jealous because I'm pregnant too." But Harold stepped forward again, holding up his phone. "I have the medical documentation of my vasectomy right here," he said sadly. "Linda, please stop lying. It's over." Linda looked around the room at all the faces staring at her, her friends, her family, her neighbors, and she realized that there was no way to spin this, no way to make herself look like the victim. She'd been caught in such an elaborate web of lies that even her masterful manipulation skills couldn't save her. "You don't understand," she said desperately. "I just wanted to be included. I just wanted to be part of the family celebration." "By stealing my celebration?" I asked. "By faking a pregnancy and planning to fake a miscarriage? By cheating on your husband and using all of us as props in your sick games?" Linda's face crumpled, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered how she'd made me feel over the past few months, questioning my own sanity, feeling guilty for wanting input in my own baby shower, feeling like I was being ungrateful for not appreciating her help. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, turning back to the microphone, "I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate my pregnancy today. Despite Linda's attempts to make this day about herself, I'm still incredibly grateful to have so many people here who genuinely care about me and my baby." The guests started clapping, and several people came over to hug me and apologize for Linda's behavior. My sister Emma wrapped her arms around me, and I finally felt like I could breathe again. Linda stood in the center of the room, completely isolated and humiliated. The friends who'd been celebrating her pregnancy announcement minutes earlier were now avoiding eye contact with her. Harold walked over to her, his face sad but resolute. "Linda, I think it's time for us to go home," he said quietly. "We have a lot to talk about." As they walked toward the exit, Linda turned back one last time. "You've ruined everything," she said to me, her voice full of venom. "You've destroyed my family." "No, Linda," I said firmly. "You destroyed your own family when you decided that your need for attention was more important than honesty, loyalty, and love. You did this to yourself." After Linda and Harold left, the atmosphere in the room completely changed. My real friends and family rallied around me, and we turned what was left of the shower into a genuine celebration. We opened the remaining gifts, shared stories about pregnancy and parenthood, and laughed about the unbelievable drama we'd just witnessed. The videographer, who had captured Linda's entire public humiliation, asked me if I wanted the footage deleted. "Actually," I said, "I think I'll keep it." Linda wanted this day to be unforgettable, and she certainly achieved that goal. As the party wound down and guests started saying their goodbyes, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in months. I'd finally stood up for myself and exposed Linda's toxic behavior, and I'd done it in a way that was public and undeniable. But more than that, I'd learned something important about myself. I'd spent months doubting my own perceptions and feelings, wondering if I was being too sensitive or dramatic. Linda had been gaslighting me so effectively that I'd started to believe her version of reality. Now I knew the truth. I hadn't been crazy or ungrateful. I'd been the victim of a calculated campaign of manipulation and control. Linda had tried to steal my joy, my special moments, and my sense of reality itself. But in the end, her own cruelty and desperation had been her downfall. 3 weeks later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. David and I named her Emma, after my sister who'd stood by me through everything. Linda tried to visit the hospital, but I'd already left instructions with the staff that she wasn't welcome. Harold filed for divorce 2 weeks after the baby shower. The text messages between Linda and Marcus had provided all the evidence he needed. Linda's affair had been going on for 6 months, and she'd been using Harold's money to pay for hotel rooms and expensive gifts for her lover. Linda's reputation in the community was completely destroyed. Her friends from the book club and church had spread word about her fake pregnancy announcement and her affair. She'd lost her volunteer positions and her social standing, and she'd become the subject of gossip and speculation throughout the town. But the most satisfying part of my revenge wasn't Linda's public humiliation. It was the peace I felt knowing that I'd protected my family from her toxic influence. David finally saw his mother for who she really was, and he supported my decision to go no contact with her. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner," he said to me one evening as we sat with our newborn daughter. "I was so used to her behavior that I didn't realize how badly she was treating you." "She's very good at making her victims feel like they're the problem," I said. "But I'm glad we figured it out before Emma was born. Our daughter deserves to grow up in a family where honesty and respect are valued." That's episode 2 of Family Betrayals That Went Too Far. Linda thought she could steal my thunder and make my baby shower about herself, but she ended up exposing her own lies and destroying her own life in the process. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting toxic people reveal their true nature to the world. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have confronted Linda privately, or would you have exposed her publicly like I did? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for episode 3 next week, where we'll explore another shocking story of family betrayal and perfectly executed revenge. Because sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who end up destroying themselves.